What's up, everybody? We were in the middle of a design session yesterday and thought we got it to a state that we were happy with, but in sleeping on it and coming back to it fresh today with fresh eyes, I am pretty certain that this design is not going to work at all. It's kind of funny how you can really get caught up in the weeds of something and really kind of like move all the pieces around, maybe this over here, maybe that over there, and you really just lose perspective of what it feels like to sit down and look at a design with fresh eyes as a new user, as somebody who's not familiar with what's going on the page and what's important on the page. And it's just so important to clear out all the chaff, to get to a really beautiful, simple hierarchy of information so that as soon as somebody sits down and they look at it, they immediately know what to do on that page. And goals needs to be front and center, but having multiple different types of goals, the daily goals, the weekly goals, the quarterly goals, and the yearly goals, all displaying at the same time, or as we ended up with in this design, because we didn't have enough space for 4 sections, we only did 2 sections, but then the 2 sections are like daily and weekly can be tabulated, and then quarterly and yearly can be tabulated, but they're like faded out in the background. It's just way too complex. You know, we're going to go back to where we started. It's kind of frustrating. Let me show you here though. At the beginning of our design, state, this is kind of like where we were before we even jumped into designing yesterday. This is what we were working with. We had goals down here on the left. We had our tasks front and center. And then we had this activity section, which I think is going to be really cool to see. And the only thing we really needed to do, and it's so obvious now, it's so funny after editing that video and watching myself work through that problem and just like kind of wanting to smack myself upside the head in the middle of the edit and be like, dude, stop, take a break, step away, come look at it fresh the way I'm looking at it right now. And it's going to be obvious to you that this is just way too complex. All I needed to do was take this goals section here, drop it up where tasks is, move tasks down temporarily until we're able to make tasks be sub items of goals, and boom, we're done. We can move on. We can implement the periodic elements of goals, the daily goals, the weekly goals, the quarterly goals, the yearly goals. We can start implementing those in the back end, but let's just get this design done. Let's get goals front and center, and let's move on to something else on this project so that we don't get stuck for over an hour trying to squeeze a round goal section into a square hole is kind of what it felt like watching myself in review of yesterday's video. So let's jump into it. Let's get this goal section into place and let's start implementing the back end. Let's stop wasting time on this design when we're not getting anywhere with it. So we are going to hide tasks to start. We're going to keep activity there. That's not something I'm going to implement right away, but we're going to keep it there for now. Let's take goals. Boom, there's our goal section. Let's make sure that we have our guides up and running so we can show tasks again just to make sure we have our guides in our right place. Boom, 660 pixels, and boom, 1260 pixels, and hide tasks, drag goals up into where tasks was. Looks like we don't have our top ruler in the right place. 140 looks correct. We can zoom in on that and move goals over just a tad. That looks like it's aligned correctly, and boom, we're basically done. We just got to fix the bottom end of this goals background. So let's make the bottom right there, goals BG, delete that. And we got to round off that edge. So what we'll do is we'll select the whole thing. We will go selection, modify, smooth, 5 pixels. That'll give us a nice 5 pixel rounded edge. And then we're going to invert the selection and delete everything outside of that rounded edge because we had these square corners on the bottom, and voila, we now have rounded edges on the bottom. There's something a little weird going on in the alternating background. So we're going to select this. We're going to go to that layer. We're going to select the inverse and delete everything outside of that box. And there we go. We fixed it. So now, in 2 minutes, we just fixed our issue with moving goals into where it needs to be. And I think this is going to work. We now have tabs for daily, weekly, and yearly. We can add a tab for quarterly. We don't even need to do that in the design. That's something that's easy to do on the front end. And boom, I think we're done. Let's get rid of this week header. I don't think we need that. And then let's get tasks in place, but let's put them 30 pixels below here. So we are at 480, I believe. Let's go down to 5 10. Is that enough space? Yeah, that's enough space. We'll move journal up to match with that. My computer is lagging just a little bit because I'm in the middle of rendering yesterday's video, which takes up a lot of resources. So Photoshop is struggling, but that's okay. We're going to still get this done. Let's move tasks now down into the spot where goals was. And literally, that is all we need to do to get this updated to be working good enough. And remember, good enough. What is that? How does that quote go? Don't let perfect get in the way of good enough. That's where we're at right now. This right here is going to be good enough. So let's hide those guides and let's take a look. I think this is going to work. You log in, you get to the projects index page. That's what this is right here. You have your list of projects on the left. That's how you can navigate into individual projects. You've got your goals front and center. You got your daily, you got your weekly, you got your yearly, you've got your quarterly. And then when there's no goals here, it'll just have a little button that says create a goal. You also have your new goal button right here. You can also, we'll have to think about, like, let's say that last time you logged in, you were looking at the weekly goals. Maybe that's the thing that we have there. Or maybe we make it smart when it's Monday morning or whatever. Maybe we can make this something you set in your profile. But let's say it's Monday morning when you log in. Boom, you don't have any weekly goals yet. It takes you to your weekly goals. Or it's January 1st, 2021. You don't have any yearly goals yet because it just flipped the calendar. When you log in, boom, there you are on the project index page with no yearly goals, and it asks you to start setting some yearly goals. So the yearly goals will be the first thing that's there. So little things like that, we can start thinking about how we implement them for the app to automatically kind of adjust depending on what the time frame is, to kind of remind you now is the day or the time and you need to be thinking about this next set of goals. So most days when you log in, it'll be just your daily goals. I think that's going to work really well. We'll keep our tasks on the bottom left for now. We'll keep journaling right where it is. We'll start implementing these little buttons here or little icons that show which project something is a part of. And then we're going to have to figure out how to get all of this implemented on the project's index page, which if we look right here, right now, this is what it looks like. We don't have any of this yet. All we have is a navigation. And what we have done is we've implemented on the individual project pages. So like for Serenity, I've got my to-dos here. I've got my sub pages, which is also going to go in this this navigation section on the left there. And then we're going to have goals right here. Activity. I guess we can still have activity, and that's the activity only for this specific project. And then we'll have the to-dos down here and we'll have our journal. So we have a couple different things that we need to update. Let's jump into that. And once we get that design updated, then maybe today, maybe tomorrow, depending on how much time we have, we can start implementing the time frame for goals, which was really the whole point of all of this. But I wanted to get everything kind of like laid out in the right place before we started doing more back end work. So I'm excited about where this design is at. It's so funny. You sleep on something, you watch yourself do a full edit where you're really wrestling with the design and just realizing how obvious it is that you're wasting your time. All right. So let's jump into the code. Let's pull up the terminal here. Make sure we're on the latest branch. We've got all our updates submitted. Looks like we did an update to our style sheet. We added a margin bottom to tables of 0. Okay. Remember doing that. We're not going to worry about, we can commit that. Moving bottom margin on tables. Okay. Now we are on a fresh git commit. Everything has been committed. And now we can do some new updates. So the first thing we're going to want to do, let's take a look at where things stand right now. We're going to do this on the project's index page, right? So let's load up our project's index page. That's app, assets, views. We're going to look at the view. App, views, projects, index.html. This is our project's index page. So right here we have, this is the navigation on the left that lists all the different projects and you can click on them. Then right here, this section is the little stats box that we have on the right. And right now they're both set to be 6 columns out of 12 columns. It's kind of a skeleton CSS that I've been using to differentiate what percentage of the page each section takes up. So because we have a total of 12 columns and we want to have it in thirds, we now need to do 4, 4, and 4 instead of 6 and 6. So we got to change both of these to be 4. see how that looks. This is the production website. You can see right here, it says velvetserenity.com. That's the production website. We're editing the local version, which is right here. If we refresh this, boom, now we have 1/3, 1/3, and we have an open space here. What we're going to do is we're going to actually put the goals right here, and this will get moved over to that space. So in between, we can do div class equals 4 columns. And we're going to say, give it a title, an H3 title. It's a 3rd level heading. Class equals left, because we're going to float it to the left side, because then we're going to have that link for new goals on the right side. And it's going to say goals. Then we have a link to new goal path, class, button right, FA button. FA is font awesome. It's this really cool library of icons that they've created a typeface actually for them. And if you use that typeface, then you can kind of use those icons within your site as actual like typography. So the plus button that I'm using for the new goal button or the new to-do button, that's from Font Awesome. So that's what this CSS, it's just a couple CSS classes that you get from the Font Awesome library that enable you to do this kind of like image replacement. So the actual text of the link says new goal, but we replace that text when you have CSS in your browser to just use a plus button visually. So when somebody uses custom style sheets to see the way you've designed the page, the visual representation of it, they get to see the plus button. But if somebody's using some kind of old school web browser that doesn't have visual styling to it, then they would just get the text. So if somebody's doing like text to speech, it's not going to just read a plus. It's going to read a new goal so that it's more accessible for somebody who's not able to actually like see the page in the way that we're designing it. So that's just what these classes are. And they are going to make it look just the way we need to look. So let's refresh this. Now we should have a goals box with a goals title and a new goals link. If we click on the new goals button, it'll take us to a page where we can create a new goal, and it's automatically going to select the most recent project that a goal was created in. But obviously you can say, wait, I want it to be in a different project, and that's totally doable too. So we're not going to create a new goal yet. Now, question is, what goals do we want to show here? Well, this is the index page for every project. So we want to show every goal that this particular user has created. Not just every goal, but every goal for today, right? We're starting with the Today tab. So let's think about how we're going to do that. What you want to do is you want to go into your controller, projects controller, and we are now in the index section, which is right here. And we've got a whole bunch of stuff that we're getting for journal entries and to-dos. Although we're not using any of these things in the view at the moment. So that's interesting. Let's now think about getting let's look at our models. First of all, we have our goal model. So, a model belongs to a user and belongs to a project. So in this case, we want to be getting all of the goals that belong to this particular user. So we're going to say goals equals current user dot goals. And voila. Now we have all of our goals stored in a variable called goals. And on our actual index page in the view here, we can start doing, let's copy the code that we use to display goals on the project show page. So, and here we have a goals list, and we're just going to paste that right there. And we just got to change the way we're referencing the goals. So instead of project.goals, it's just going to be goals.each. And that should work. Now, all the goals for this particular user are now visible in this goal section. So we're showing all of the goals that this user's ever created. And obviously that's not what we want. We want to have them tabulated based on the time period. So all we need to do now is, because let's say that these are the daily goals, and we can create a, let's close this page so we have more space. We can create a comment in our HTML, and we can say daily goals. And to get daily goals, we would need to say goals.select or .where. I don't remember the syntax. The nice thing, let's go into the Ruby console. So let's say Rails C for Rails console. And let's get the current user, u equals user.last. Did that get anything? Yeah, that's me. Then we want to get goal or g equals u.goals. Now we have all of the goals in a hash. Now, if we just want to get the subset of these goals where the moment that they were created was today, how would we do that? We would say goals.where created at let's Google this real quick. Rails select where created at is today. Event.where date created at equals date question mark time dot now. That makes sense. Cool. So we're going to say where, let's just copy that. And I'll explain what this is in 2 seconds. So we're going to have a string. Let's just test that. That didn't return anything because we haven't created any goals today. So let's go ahead in the front end and create a new goal. Test new goals. That's our goal. It's going in the personal project. It takes us to that project. And it shows up right here, but we want to go back to the project's index page. We'll have to think about how that works when you're creating new goals and you're on the project's index page, but let's put that on the back burner. So we have our new goal here. If we go back to the console and we still say goals.where, boom, there we go. Now it returns that most recent goal. So what this bit of code is saying, we're going to select the goals where we're going to create a date object, of the created at column in the goals table. And we're going to say, we're going to pull all of the goals from this subset of goals that we've already made a subset of the current user's goals. And we're only going to pull the ones where we create another date object with a question mark. That question mark then references whatever you put after the comma. And we just say time.now. So Ruby says, time.now, create a new date object of time.now, and we check to see if, because date, the nice thing about date is that it ignores time. So time.now creates a time object, and then in the actual string, we create a date object using time.now. So time.now has today's date with the time. That would just strip out the time and create a new date object with just the date, which is just today. And it compares it to all of the goals created at timestamps, and it returns all of the goals that have a created at timestamp, where when you create a date object out of it, that date object is the same as the date object we create with today's date. In that case, then we get every single goal for today. Now, we are going to take that code and we're going to use that here in our view. So .where date created at equals, and why is it equals and not equals? MySQL, which is this language we're coding in right there to pull from the database, is a little rusty. Equals versus double equals, comparison operators and Postgres. Look at that right there. That's what you're supposed to use, just a regular equals sign. Most coding languages use a double equal sign because a regular equal sign is to assign something. So if you want to say this variable is equal to this, it takes the value of whatever's on that side of the equal sign and it puts it in memory under this variable. But I guess in SQL language, which is a language that works with databases, you're not really assigning things, you're just kind of comparing things. So they just use a regular equal sign. So good to know. It's always good to double check that stuff when you're copying code off the internet, because syntax can be really important and can really kind of mess your code up in weird ways if you don't get it right. But in this case, a single equal sign is all you need. So equals, a new date object with a question mark, and that question mark then gets referenced in whatever comes after the comma, time.now. Boom, that should return all the goals that are equal to today. It's saying we might have a typo somewhere, but it looks good to me. So let's just go and refresh our page and see what that looks like. Oh, we do have an issue. Syntax error, unexpected end date. Date.created at equals date. Did we not get that right? Date created at equals, what did I type? Date created at equals date question mark. It looks like I typed it right to me, but let's just copy that whole where clause and paste and refresh. It looks the same to me. What did I do wrong? Oh, it needs to be dot each, obviously. Sorry. That should be a dot, not a space. And there we go. It's now showing our goals for today. So now we need to create tabs up here, just above this section that enables you to switch between today's goals, this week's goals, and quarterly and yearly. So let's start creating those tabs. We're going to create a div for equals goal tabs. Sometimes it can be good when you have tabs to create them as an unordered list in terms of the HTML that you use to create it, rather than just using divider or div blocks to separate them out. Just semantically, it kind of makes more sense because it's like a list of the different sections you can go to. So let's go ahead and do that instead of making it a div. So then each one is going to be a list item. And let's see here. The first one is daily goals. And we're just going to make that the current list item. So give it a class of current item, or maybe just current. And then we'll think about, like, if it loads on the page and you want to have the weekly goals being shown, we'll have to just change it to say that the weekly goals is the current one, not the daily. So the other ones are not going to be current. So it'll say weekly, daily, weekly. You know what? Instead of saying daily and weekly, I think we wanted them to actually show the date. So daily should show, the tab should show the number of the day, which is time.now.strf time. And then inside that, we need to have a string that tells it which part of the time we want to show. So Rails strf time function. I always have to look up the syntax for this. It's not something that you're ever going to remember. Some people I'm sure do if they work with these all the time, but I don't work with them very often. So right here, we can see that we want to have the day of the year, or the day of the month, zero padded. We don't really care if it's padded. So we'll do %e blank pad. No, not blank padded. No padded. -d is the one we want. So %-d. %-d. And, you know, instead of doing a time object, let's do a date object because we don't care about the time. %-d, ending our string, ending that. And now it should show the number of the day of the month, except we got something wrong. Undefined method now for date. Is it today? Is that the syntax? Date.today. Voila. Nice. Now, obviously, we don't have the styling in place yet. We're just doing the underlying HTML. So 13 is what we wanted it to display. That's today's number. And then next it'll say the week. So instead of weekly, it's going to say week 20. So how do we get the week of the year? I'm not even sure if that's possible in... Yeah, look at that. Week number of the year. The week starts with Sunday or week starts with Monday. Ooh. So this is an interesting question. I know a lot of websites that work with calendars and things like that and allow users to have their own preferences. They allow you to set when you want the week to start, whether it's Sunday or Monday. We're not going to do that in the beginning. It's something we could think about doing down the road if we wanted to really give users that kind of preference ability. I think just because this is really designed around a work week, at least for me, that's how I'm using it. I imagine that's how other people would be using it if I did, if I created it so that other people could use it. And I think that means that we start our week on Monday. It's Saturday, Sunday, or the weekend. We don't sit down Sunday and say, all right, it's the new week. What are we thinking about this week? Sunday's more like, let's wrap up the end of last week. And then Monday is really the start of the new week. So we're going to do starting on Monday. And that is right here. A %W is the number of the year with the week starting Monday. 0 through 53. That's interesting. You can have 53 because even though there's only 52 weeks in the year, if the year starts on a Wednesday, you have like the first week, and then the last week, that maybe say the year ends on a Friday, the last week would be short. So it's like half of the first week and half of the last week add up to be only a 52nd week, but they really become 0 and 53. Although that sounds like 54. That's interesting. Either way, we need to have a %W is what we want to display. So week and date dot today, date dot new dot strf time. Let's say today, just to be consistent. %W. Let's see if that displays correctly. It should display a 20. It displays a 19. I thought this was week 20. Week of the year. All right, what's going on, Rails? It's currently week 20, according to epochconverter.com. Why is it displaying 19? Maybe it starts with 0. So the 0th week, then the first week. Do I always need to add 1 week to it? That would be annoying. Let's Google it just to find out how other people have been using this. Rails get week number. So let's see how other people have. Find the calendar week. C week method. Starting from 1 to maximum 53. Easiest way to get number. Date.new C week. So we could just say .c week instead of .strf time. .new.c week. So C week, I assume, stands for calendar week. And that says .1, right? So that would just create a new date object. We want to say date.today.calendar week, week 20. Voila. I really wonder why the strf time function thinks that the current week is the 19th week. I'm guessing it's because it starts counting at 0 instead of starting counting at 1. So everything is off by 1. Weird. Anyway, this seems to be the correct number that we're looking for. And then we want to find, let's see. So we have the day, we have the week, we have the quarter. So I wonder if there's a quick way in Rails. Rails get, let's just in a new tab, Rails get current quarter from date. This looks like a piece of code that somebody else wrote. Beginning of quarter. So you can say date.beginning of quarter. Let's test that out and see what that does in Ruby. So date.today.beginning of quarter. It gives you a date object with April 1st, 2020. We just want the quarter number. We want to get a 1, 2, or 3, or 4 from that. Let's look up that actual function on API doc, which for some reason is always so slow. I almost never click on API doc links because it just takes so long to load. Like, what are you doing? There you go. All right. Returns a date time representing the start of the quarter. Well, that doesn't help us very much. Okay. Ruby method to get the months of quarter that the date belongs to. Get the quarter of year. You can use date.new. I want something that returns a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4, and it doesn't look like any of this is helping with that. Well, this is the date and time object that shows all of the different functions that have been written for it. So maybe there's something on here. We don't want beginning of quarter. Is there like just a dot quarter? That would be nice. Dot Monday, dot months ago, dot next quarter, dot Sunday, dot today. Well, this is something we could definitely write as a new function, but we like to keep our code as clean as possible. So I really feel like this has got to be something that's built into it. And it's bizarre that I'm not seeing anybody else asking this specific question and getting an answer. How to get start and end date from quarters. How to select quarter for current year by number in Ruby. That's exactly what we want. No, which quarter are we currently in? Bizarre. See, this doesn't even include the quarter. Let's just double check on here. Let's search for quarter on strf time. It doesn't exist. So we're going to have to write a new function, a new helper method to be able to basically return for us whether or not the current date is quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, or quarter 4. So let's do that in our application helper or projects helper, application helper. All right, so let's create a new define get current quarter. Function to return current quarter as number. Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. I guess we'll just do a simple if-else statement. If, let's say, today equals date.today. If today is dot beginning, if today dot beginning of quarter equals date dot new. How would we say that? I think we can just copy and paste this string into there. Date dot new. Nope, that doesn't work. What if we just say date dot today dot beginning of quarter equals this particular string? False. What if we keep that space in it? Nope. Rails create date from string. All right, let's test that. The actual format that we want is this. I believe it's month, or is it day first? Year, month, day. That's the format we want to use. So date. So what we have to say here is if today dot beginning of quarter equals or is equal to 2020. Wait, no. I'm a little confused about exactly how to implement this. Today dot beginning of quarter dot month. I think the month is the important thing here. Is equal to April. So date dot today dot beginning of quarter returns, all right, dot day, sorry, dot month is 4, right? So April's the 4th month. Perfect. Awesome. If it equals 1, then we know it's quarter 1. Then return 1. Else if today dot beginning of quarter dot month equals 2. Ha, hilarious. All we have to do, this is so dumb. That's so funny when you work through a problem and you realize all you had to do the entire time was to just simply say today dot beginning of quarter dot month. And we can delete this entire function. Hilarious. Another example of, I wish I could reach through the screen and grab myself about 10 minutes ago and tell me that. But sometimes you got to work through the problem. So instead of saying date.today.strf time, we'll just simply say dot beginning. That's so funny. Dot month. There you go. That's going to display the number of the month. But we didn't want to change that part. We wanted to do it here. Q, and then we're going to say date.today.beginning of quarter.month. And that should say Q1 or Q2 or Q3 or Q4. Why is it saying Q4? The month. We have to divide by 4. Hilarious. Now, what do we divide by? How do we get 4 to 2? We divide by 2. How do we get, let's see, we have month 1, we have month 4. Month 4 becomes quarter 2. Month 8 becomes quarter 3. What's the formula for that? And month, is it 8? It's month 1, month 4, month 7, and month 10. So I think if we add 3 and divide by 4, right? So 1 plus 3 is 4. Divided by 4 is 1, right? 4 plus 3 is 7. Divided by 4. It's not quite 2. This should be more obvious to me. How would you get current quarter in Ruby? Quarter as number? Divided by 3. 4 divided by 3. Month. Fascinating. So if you divide by 3.0, so let's say that the current month is 1. Divide that by 3.0, you get 1. Take the ceiling of that, you get 1. That's so interesting that this works. Then let's say the month is April, the beginning of the quarter, the month is April. So you have a 4. 4 divided by 3 is 1.33. You take the ceiling of that, it gives you 2. Then let's say the month, the beginning of the quarter is month 7, right? That's quarter 3, month 7. You divide 7 by 3. That gives you what, 2.33? Believe? Yeah. 7.0 divided by 3.0 gives you 2.33, right? The ceiling of that is 3. This is so funny that this works. Then you take the 10th quarter, or the 10th month, which is the 4th quarter, that's October. You divide that by 3, you get 3.33. So 10.0 divided by 3.0 is 3.33, the ceiling of which is 4. That works. Gives us 1, it gives us 2, it gives us 3, it gives us 4. Boom, we have an answer. And it's totally not something I ever would have come up with myself. And I'm so happy I came across this website here that explains it. And it's the only one of all the freaking pages I looked at. None of them even came close to trying to address exactly what we're trying to do. That's so funny. Usually you come across all these different things that people come up with for this issue, but it doesn't seem like a lot of other people are trying to do exactly what I'm trying to do here, which is pretty funny. I almost feel like I should create a blog post about it so that if somebody else comes across that, they can find it more easily. But anyway, we now have the code that we need. So it's .month divided by 3.0, but we have to put that in brackets so that we can take the ceiling of the result of that entire division. So opening bracket, closing bracket dot ceiling. And let's see what that looks like. Q2, voila. Now, we'd want to make sure that we could test it with, let's say we added .month plus 3 months just to go up 3 months. And why can't we say 3 months? I thought you could say that. Yeah. Well, not .months, just plus 3. Takes us to quarter 5. Why? Because we're doing the division before we do the addition. That's why. There. Let's add 3 to the current month, and that takes us into quarter 3. And let's add 6 and that takes it to quarter 4. So it looks like this function works, and I'm just cracking up at how simple it is and how non-intuitive it is. So thank you to Mr. Internet person, whoever you are, that came up with that. There we go. So now we have quarter 2, and next we just need to have a list item for the current year. So date.today.year, that should do it. There we go. Now we have our HTML with list items for the different tabs. We have 13 being the current day, week 20 being the current week, quarter 2 or 2020 being the year. Does that make sense? Just visually, if it says 13 instead of saying today. You know what I should say? I should say May 13th. That would make more sense. Date.today.srf time. So inside this string that tells it what to display for that, we can go back to Rails strf time to find out how to display the current month. It's probably an M or something like that, but let's look it up. Month of the year is %M, but we want to have the actual name of it, and we want to have it abbreviated like this, which is %B. So %B with a space, and voila, May 13, week 20, quarter 2, 2020. We got it. Now we just need to create the styling to lay out our tabs across the top like that. And there's something wrong with our HTML here, which is causing this to not be part of this div anymore. So I think what it is here is we actually originally made this a div, but then we changed it to an unordered list. So we have to close that unordered list like that, and boom, we've got that back. Okay, so we have our HTML that gives us the list items that will be the different tabs. And then I think that they should even be actually links at some point. But for now, well, we don't need to make them links. We're just going to use JavaScript to tell it what to do when you click on the different ones. And the JavaScript can use a list item as a clickable link instead of an A tag, which is a traditional link tag. So what we need to do now is look at our style sheet. So this will be in our application style sheet because we need to use it in multiple different places. We could just do it in our project style sheet. Let's do it in the project style sheet, because this is really only for projects. So let's say goals list. No, it's goal tabs. Display, I think inline block. And ul.goal tabs. List items are also going to be display inline block. By default, I believe a list, an unordered list, is displayed as a block item, and we want it to be inline. And then the list items themselves, rather than being individual blocks, we want them to be inline blocks that they display one after the other like this. So May 13th, week 20, quarter 2, 2020. You can see that right here. It's all in one line. That's what we want. If we inspect that, I believe that this should take up the entire width of the element that it is inside. So our unordered list, that's what it looks like. So it has a lot of padding around it. This padding comes from are just general styling for unordered lists in general. And we want to get rid of that and kind of reset that. So margin 0, padding 0, and same thing here. Because this isn't a standard unordered list or a standard list item. This is going to have special styling for it. So you can see right here. Now, question is, why is it displaying there in the center and not all the way to the left? Because it's displaying after goals. It would be cool if it could display after goals like that. And you know what? Let's get rid of that display inline block like that. Let's keep that as a block instead of an inline block. And if we maybe make the text smaller, on these. We can keep, but the problem becomes then what happens when we start making the page smaller, we start running out of space for them. But then they could just go to a new line. I think maybe they just need to be on a new line. Even though like when the browser is this wide, you have a lot of space for them. Problem is when the browser comes down this small, though what we could do is when the browser becomes that small, we can just hide the stats and then we can make projects and goals be like full width. Which, well, I guess that happens here when it goes down below a certain amount. Yeah, I think they need to be on a new line. So we're going to say clear both. That'll clear the floats and drop them down to a new line. And I think we want to float the whole thing to the right. That looks really cool. I like it floated to the right like that. We just want to have a padding on the right now of 30 pixels. Maybe 25? Or just 20? That didn't save. If you hit capital W instead of a regular W, it doesn't save. That looks like it's lined up correctly now. Okay, so now for the padding for each individual tab, we want to have padding on the sides of 5 pixels. And we want to have probably padding on the top of like top and bottom being like 2 pixels to give a little bit of space around these tabs. You know what? Let's just make it 5 all the way around. Maybe 5 and 10. 10 on the sides, 5 on the top and bottom. That's kind of nice. Okay, so now we need to have backgrounds for them. So let's say background color. Let's look at our Photoshop document to get a good background color here. We have this right there. And 3C, 3C, 3C. All right, now we have spacing between them. I'm not sure what that's coming from. It looks like a margin, even though we have a margin of 0. If we go to computed, it's showing a gap of 10. No, that's a padding. Why do they have spacing between them? Even though it's showing border of 0 and a margin of 0. They're not right up against each other. I wonder why. Well, it's not the end of the world because only one of them is going to look like that. So now we want to have a border radius, but we only want to have the border radius on the top left and the top right, not on top left and bottom right. Radius is set for all 4 sides. So it looks like here we can specify the numbers top left corner, top right corner, bottom right, bottom left. So that's how we need to do it. So border radius, I think it's 3 pixels. Let's do 5 pixels. 5 pixels, that's top left and top right, and then bottom right, bottom left. 0 and 0. And let's see how that looks. Looks pretty good for our tabs. Cool. And then we want to say cursor pointer because we want to act like they're links. Ooh, I just zoomed in on the page without intending to. There. So now you can, CSS tells it, this is, it looks like a link, so we're going to use a pointer cursor. But we only want to have the current one have that background color. So what is the background color of our actual box? 333. So let's create a new class for UL goal tabs list item dot current. That's the current one. That's the one that gets the background color of 3C. And then the rest of them get, was it CCC? 333. And voila, the current one is the only one that has that current color. Awesome. Then also the current one should have a regular cursor. It's default, I think you can say. Yeah. Let's look up CSS cursor property and see what the default is actually defined as. Auto or default, the platform dependent cursor. I think auto is what we want to go with. What is the difference between auto and default? Determine the cursor display based on the current context. Yeah, we want an arrow. We don't want it to be a text cursor because we don't want them when they're hovering over this. Like if you're hovering over here, you see how it's a text so you can select it. That's not really the point of a tab. So I think an arrow is what we want to have. I wonder if you can even specify arrow. I don't see arrow as an option on any of these. So I think if we just say default, that'll go back to the arrow. So, whoops. There we are, back on default. And voila, we now don't have a pointer there, but we do here, here, here. Cool. I'm not super happy with the spacing on these. So let's go back to on the sides of padding being 5px. Let's see what that looks like. No, it was better before. Yeah, that's nice. It's cool because it spells out the full date. May 13th, week 20, quarter 2, 2020. And then you can click on the different tabs to see the goals for those specific states. Now, let's add more test goals for today. More test goals. And go back to the index page. And let's add one more test, another goal. Awesome. And you know what? Well, let's add one that's on a different project. Test Serenity goals. And we didn't make it on a different project. Hilarious. Let's say actually test. And let's specify Serenity as the project. Cool. Because then we're going to start adding in the identifier for which project that is a part of. Now, the reason I added more goals here is because I wanted to be able to create this alternating styling for the different goals. So we want to go to, you know what I realized? Our goal styling is all in the application CSS. We should probably move that over here to the project CSS. Yeah, so here we go, goals. You know what? Let's just keep it all in the application. I'm okay with that. I know it's not the best, but I'm pretty good at organizing my application styling. So we're just going to do that. We'll get rid of that style sheet and we'll keep it here. So now we have goals list. And you know what? We should have the tabs actually be above the rest of what we're doing with the actual list itself, just because that's kind of how it shows up on the page. So before we jump into goals list, let's do goals tabs. Goal tabs. All right. So goal list, we have, let's look at the HTML for goal list. Here's our goal list. We essentially just have a list of label tags, one after another. So for the label tags, we want to give them, there was a way we did this with the tables. We want to say, I think right here we said that was the HTML we did for the odd table numbers or the even table numbers, or the odd rows and the even rows. That's how you you differentiate between them. So here we can say goal list.label nth child odd. So goals list label nth child odd. Oops. And even. And we're not going to say TD because it's not relevant. And now we're just using the same coloring as the projects table used. Now, this is interesting. It looks like we're going over the edge of our enclosing. So these labels should take the full width. So our goals list, we don't want to have padding left on the goals list. We want to have it on the label. And we're going to give it 40 pixels. And then the before section, we're going to say it needs to come in 20 pixels. There, that looks good. Now, what's going on with the full width? Generally, when you start adding padding to interior objects that have a width of 100%, it adds to that 100% rather than limiting it at 100%. So these label tags, we need to figure out why they're going over the full width of what they need to be. Width is set to 95%. If we did 88%, that works like this, but what if we resize, not that page, but our actual browser window? It starts getting weird again. So I think there's a way to compute this. CSS width minus padding. How to make an element width 100 minus padding. Here's our answer. Box sizing border box width 100. Let's try that. So for our label, we want to say, what do we want to say? Box sizing border dash box. And our width, well, let's see what that looks like with 95%. That looks good. Then let's go to 100%. Gotcha. Very cool. So now we have our goals. Look at that. We can check them off. We can mark them as failed. And we have them tabulated. The only thing we don't have right now is how to switch between different tabs. So now we need to write the JavaScript for that. But before we do that, we need to create the actual sections of goals that are for the different ones. So here we have goals list. We're going to give it an ID of daily goals. And now we're going to copy that whole thing, and we're going to create a new one for weekly goals. We're going to call it weekly goals, and then we're going to say goals.where created at is less than a date and date created at, we're going to start with greater than one date and less than another date. And those two dates are time.now.beginning, date.now. Date.today. We can do time.now. Why not? Beginning of week. How do you spell beginning of week? And time.now.end of week. And we have a syntax error. Let's go through this function from the beginning. I think we have an extra. Yeah, that's all we had. We had an extra bracket. There. So now we have one section, which is just the goals from today. That's all the way up to here. Then we have another section, which has all of the goals from this entire week. Now, how do we test that that's showing all the goals from the entire week? Didn't we have other goals? Let's delete the daily goals. That's just the weekly goals now. Didn't we have goals that were this week? Let's look. U equals user.last, u.goals, .first, .created at Tuesday, May 5th, 2020. That's not this week. That's why. Okay. Well, whatever. I think we're in good shape for that. Now I want to test the quarter weekly goals. So let's add a section for quarterly goals. So we have weekly goals. And let's say quarterly goals. And you know, we also need to add a current for the daily goals, and that just means to show it. So goals list dot current. No, all goals lists, we're going to say display none. But the goals list that has the class of current, we're going to say display block. That's how we will switch between the different ones. So right now it's only showing the daily, but if we take this current class, which is what we're going to do with our JavaScript, and add it here, it's going to show the weekly, which look the same. But then if we add it here, we don't see anything for quarterly goals. Why don't we see anything for quarterly goals? We should be displaying the same thing we were for weekly goals at this point. I think we had an extra div. That was the issue. No, we didn't. What's going on here? What is this div for? That's for that one. Oh, that's why it goes here. That's why. That makes sense. There we go. So now for the quarterly goals, we are displaying all of the weekly goals because that's just the code that we copied. But now instead we say a date that's between time.now.beginning of quarter and time.now.end of quarter. Nice. So now we're seeing all the goals from this quarter. Interesting. Interesting. I thought I was going to get away with making this just simply showing smaller subsets of goals, but we actually need to have different goals. So like these goals right here that were created as daily goals, they shouldn't show up as quarterly goals. It's not just all goals that were created in the past quarter. It's only goals that were specified to be quarterly goals. So what we need to do is we actually need to add a column to the goals table that says, what type of goal are you? And we're going to make that an enumerable. So Rails generate migration, add period to goals. We'll call it period. So 0513 add column goals period integer default 1. No, default is 0. So the period is going to be an integer, and it's going to be either 0, 1, 2, or 3. And in our goals model, we will define 0 to be equal to a daily goal, 1 to be equal to a weekly goal, 2 to be equal to a quarterly, 3 for yearly. That should work. So let's run that migration, run Rails db migrate. That should add that column to our goals table. Now, if we reload our... Well, first let's go to our model. So app models, goals, and we're going to create a new enum. Period. We have daily, weekly, quarterly, yearly. So now in that period column, if we go back to our Rails console and refresh it, and we say goal.last dot period, it should return daily. Yes. Awesome. If we say goals dot daily, that doesn't work. Rails enum. I believe there's a way to select every goal that has a certain type. So here, let's look at dot status published dot published with an exclamation point. Oh no, that's changing it to that. So list all published catalogs. We can just say catalog dot published. So goal dot daily. That's what I thought. I just typed goals instead of goal, and it's singular, not plural, for a model name. So then we can say current user. So user.last.goals.daily. Those are all of my daily goals. Where. Yeah, so we want to say where to get the ones in a certain period, and then we want to say daily to get. So now we can just go back to our view. I have some of that views projects index, and we want to open the HTML page. So for daily goals, there's actually something I realized that I'm doing here. I'm in my controller, I'm actually pulling out every single goal, and we don't want to do that. We only want to pull out the daily goals, the current daily goals, the current weekly goals, because what happens when you have like 1,000 or 1,000,000 goals in your database for a specific user, not 1,000,000, but 1,000 if you really use this for a long time. Every time you load the page, you're going to pull all 1,000 of those out of your database and load them into your goals variable. And then you're going to do a subsection of them after the fact. But really what we could do to make this more efficient, so that we're not loading a ton of stuff into the application memory, not that this app's ever going to get that big where that matters, but it's good to, stick to good coding practices for this kind of thing. Let's go back to our controller. And we're going to say not all goals, but daily goals. And we're going to say where date created at. It's good to keep this kind of stuff in the controller and not in your view anyway, and just have actual variables in the view. Now that I realized we needed to actually have, a column type for what type of goal it is, but we still need to have a period, because we don't want to just pull all daily goals. We want just the goals where the created at is today, dot daily, and the type is daily. Okay, so that's how we get daily goals. And now we should, instead of saying this entire thing here, we're going to say daily goals dot each, and let's test that and see what that looks like. On our front end, we have a typo. Undefined method each for nil class. That returned nil. Why did that return nil? Current user dot goals dot where date created at is today, and type is daily. Let's test that in our browser, or in our Ruby console. So we have date created at equals time. No, date question mark time dot now. That should pull all the goals that were created today, but we only want the ones that have a type of daily. It should be the exact same thing. That's what I thought. So why is this returning nil? Current user dot goals dot where user.last.goals.where, that should be the same thing. Date created at equals date question mark time.now dot daily. It's exactly what I'm doing in my console. And in the console it's working. But here it's nil. Either way, we should check for nil, because if you do not have any, it shouldn't return nil. It should return an empty array. So it might be that I'm not saving my my variable correctly. Did I not spell it correctly? Daily goals. Maybe I didn't save that. I didn't save it. That's so funny. Okay, invalid syntax for type daily. Well, I guess we could say dot daily before we say dot where. Goals dot daily, because you have to run daily on a goals collection. Nope. Goals dot period equals 2. And invalid text representation. Invalid input syntax for type integer daily. That's so interesting. What if we just said goals.daily? What's going on here? You're supposed to be able to say goals.daily. It works in the console. Hilarious. Such a common mistake. And it's so annoying when you make this mistake and you can't figure out what you're doing. You have to restart your local server after running a migration, because the local server doesn't know about any of those migrations. It doesn't know about those new tables. It doesn't know about the updates you've done to your model that created this enumerable called, what is it called? Come on. Did not mean to do that. What is it called? All right. Well, anyway, undefined method where for nil class. Goals.where. Right. Now we don't have a goals class. That's exactly what I thought though. So let's reopen the view for this view index. And let's put it over here. All right. So now we have the daily goals are displaying correctly, but we're throwing an error because we're saying here goals.where. We need to add the weekly goals to weekly goals equals to our controller, and then say that same thing here. So we're going to say here, copy this entire thing, paste it there. We're going to say current user.goals.weekly.where, and then over here we're going to say weekly goals. Same thing for quarterly. We're going to copy that where clause. And we're going to say quarterly goals equals current user.goals.where. But first we're going to say .quarterly .where, and then we're going to say yearly goals equals current user.goals.yearly is the type of goals we want to select by, and then our where statement is going to say date created at is greater than date question mark, and date created at is less than date question mark. And the two question marks are time.now.beginning of year and time.now.end of year. Cool. And here we're going to say goals, quarterly goals. And for yearly goals, we're going to say then we're going to make that one current so we can view that one and not the quarterly. We're going to say here quarterly goals, we're going to change that to yearly goals. Boom. What did we mess up now? In yearly goals, we have a typo. Syntax error, end of input. Let's look at our syntax. Okay, so we say where date created at is greater than date question mark, and date created at is less than date question mark, but this is a typo right there. Gotcha. Boom. So now we should be showing all of the goals that are of type yearly that were created this year. And we don't have any because all the goals that we've created so far have been set to being type daily. So that now what that means is on the goals page, we need a drop down that says type or period. So let's open up our goals form. So we want goals underscore form. And we'll just copy this one. No, we want it to be a collection select, just like this one. And we're going to say, this is not project ID, but this is going to be period. And what is our collection select going to have? We can say goal.periods dot how do we pull just the numbers out of these? Well, let's just try the whole thing. Goal.periods. Curious what that's going to display. Doesn't like it. It was given an argument of 2, right? So we need to just pull, I think we can say .map. .map K, comma J. So just saying those are the 2 values, and we just want to turn the J's. There, gotcha. .map K, comma J, and then return the J. Let's see what that is. Wrong number of arguments given to expected 4.6. So what does collection select expect to be getting? We gotta look that up. Rails collection select. Actually, I like this little question mark here. Rails collection, or this little blog post here. Rails collection select, what the heck? Because it's a fairly complicated thing. What exactly do we need to be passing to this Rails collection select? Creates HTML that looks like this. You want the object, the method, the collection, the value method, and the text method. So if we actually look at the one down here, okay, that we have, the next thing we need is the actual object, which would be goal.periods. Then we want the first one, let's just say 0 and 1. I'm actually curious if that would work. 1 is not a symbol nor a string. So 0 worked, but 1 didn't. This is essentially saying that in goal.periods, which returns a hash with different objects. The first object is saying it's a key and value pair. So the key is daily, the value is 0. Not sure how to reference those. Maybe if we said goal.periods.map K, comma J, and return just the keys. And then we say here, goal.periods. I'm really just kind of winging this, kind of guessing on this. We want to say key value. I don't know why I'm using J for value. And we're just going to return the value. Be hilarious if this worked. Of course it didn't work. 0, 1, 2, 3 is not a symbol nor a string. So it's saying that for the value, we're not returning the right thing. Maybe I need to reverse these. So here we do J and here we do K. Doesn't like daily, weekly, quarterly, yearly either. That should be an array of all of them. One argument at a time. The object, we know what that is. Oh wait, you know what? Maybe I don't even have to specify these other parameters. Whoa. No, it's expecting more parameters. The method, along with the first argument, sets the name and ID of the attributes to get the params, the property params song genre ID. Okay, we already have that. Collection. That can be goal.periods. Then we need the value method and the text method. So how do we get the value method? Maybe we just say ID. And then the text method would be name. ID and name. Let's see if that works. No, name is not undefined method name for daily comma 0 array. So what we need to do is figure out how to get a Rails enum collection select. Ha, I'm not the only one asking this question. Active quick trip use enums and Rails for mapped collection select. This is how they do it. Go away with your add. Customer cases.statuses.map. First and second? Really? That's so funny. Except we want to switch those. And then we want to capitalize them. So let's ask how we would capitalize. Rails collection select. Capitalize. So you'd have to create in the model name for select. All right, so in our goals model, define name for select or period name. And we're going to return period.capitalize, which I can never spell. Did I spell that right? Looks like it. And then over here, instead of saying first, we can say period name for select. Really? But with a colon on the front. Didn't think that was going to work. Undefined method, period name for select. All right, so it looks like we actually just want to use a regular select, not a collection select. So we're going to say f dot select. We're going to use period. And then we're going to say goal dot periods dot keys dot map. Goal dot, so period dot titleize. That lets us capitalize it. And then the second value we want to return is boom. We got it. So using a regular select on a collection select pulls from a collection of an object in the database. So a whole set of like goals, like we have goal 1, goal 2, goal 3 coming out of the database. In this case, we just have the periods, which is an enum on the goals model. So we just want to select different types of the periods that it could be. So the way that we map that out then here is we take from the goals model, we say take the periods column, which is an enumerable, and map out the value pairs of that. So the first value pair is going to be daily and 0. So we have data and value pairs. So K is going to be daily, J is going to be 0. So we take K and titleize it, and then we return that back to it. So essentially for each one, we're able to titleize that and then send it back in the hash that has daily comma 0. The next value will be weekly comma 1, the next one. And then essentially then those get inserted into the form and it looks like this. So that took me a little bit longer than was ideal, but now we can specify goals as being daily, weekly, quarterly, or yearly. So let's make a yearly goal. Make yearly goals, and boom! If we go back to the project page and we are not seeing it, so let's look in our database in our Ruby console, and let's say user.last.goals.where date current created at is, this is for yearly goals. Date.created at is greater than date question mark, and date created at is less than date question mark, comma, time now dot beginning of year, then time dot now dot end of year. That's going to give me all the goals that were created this year, but we want to say goals.yearly and none. So let's just say user.last.goals.yearly. Trace back. Uninitialized constant user.last.goals.yearly. Not a single one. So let's look at that last goal that was created here. Processing project controller index. There's a lot of caching and stuff getting pulled. What is going on? Completed. What was this request that had all of this caching? Processed goals controller new. Where? How about a create? Is there a create in here anywhere? Right. Let's just pull the last goal. Goal.last. Period was set to daily. So it didn't set the period. I know why. So when you add a new column to your database, you have to go into your controller and tell your controller that it's okay to accept that data when it's being submitted in a form. So here we are in our project parameters for the projects controller, which is not the one we want to be in. We want to be in the goals controller. So we're going to get rid of this method, which we didn't end up using. Let's go close that, and we'll open our goals controller. We'll go to our project params here. And this is basically saying these are the only parameters that we're allowing somebody to submit to our database, to our backend. So we have our user ID, we have our title, we have our status, we have our project ID, and we now have our period. And now when we go to create a new goal, because what happened when I created that one, it took the data and it ignored the period. It said, we're not accepting data, some data field called period. We've never heard of that before. We're not going to allow it. So it just set it by default to be the daily period, because on the back end, it never received that input of what period it should be, because it got cut out from the controller. So now when we go and we create a new goal and we say we want it to be a yearly goal, and we say make yearly goal for real this time, 3 is not a valid period. Why is 3 not a valid period? You know what it is? It's actually wanting to have it submit as, say, a daily, weekly, yearly, or quarterly, I think, instead of the actual number. So let's change that form to, if you look at the HTML here for this form, what it's doing is in the select, it's putting the option as the value. Here we were passing the value to be 0, 1, 2, or 3, but it sounds like it's wanting an actual text value. So we're going to pass it the text value instead. So let's try that. Make yearly goal for real. And let's make it a yearly goal and create. And boom, looks like that worked. So now, boom, there we have it. We have our yearly goal for real. Looks like we need a little bit more padding on these goals. If we go back to our goals view, and let's make not the yearly goals current, but the daily goals, which we have a lot of because we've created a whole bunch of test goals. The padding is a little off. So it looks to me for goals list labels, we want to have a little bit more padding on the top. Just style sheet, application, goals list, label right here. So padding, I don't know, 3 pixels top, 5 pixels right. Let's say 2 pixels top and bottom. and 40 pixels left. That looks better. And now what we need to do is this checkbox, we need to move down 3 pixels or 2 pixels or whatever. So that's in the before section. Right here where we say top 3 pixels, we're going to make that top 5 pixels. And maybe even 6 pixels from the top. That looks better. What I don't like about this whole thing is the padding on the bottom now is too much. So let's go back to Goals tab label, and let's make the bottom padding 0. That looks nice. I like that a lot. So here we have our daily goals. We have our weekly, our quarterly, and our yearly goals currently being hidden. And I think that we set them up correctly. But what we need to have now is we need to have a JavaScript function that tells it when you click on this tab or that tab, it tells it to switch to showing that specific section. So let's do that. Let's go into our application JavaScript and let's create a new function. We're going to call it toggle goals list equals data. And let's see how this one looks. Rather than just data, we want to say period. What period are we going to pass to it? So we'll pass just a string that says daily, weekly, quarterly, or yearly. So here we're going to say if. First, we're going to remove. First, we need to figure out which one is currently active. So we need to find also which tab is currently active. So the tab is called, where are the goals tabs? Right. So we have goal tabs dot current, and we're actually going to need to add IDs for each list item for the goal tabs so that we can identify which one to switch to. So we have ID equals daily tab, goal daily tab. And this one will say ID equals goal weekly tab. And this one will be goal quarterly. And this one will be goal yearly tab. Okay. So first, the beginning of this function, when a new tab is clicked, we're going to identify the current tab that has the class of current, and we're going to remove that class name so that we can add it to the next one, which is the one that we actually want to add it to. So goal tabs dot current dot remove class current. And you know what? We should just test that from the beginning. So the way that we're going to call this tab is if we click on weekly goals, on click, toggle goals list weekly. Moment of truth. If we click on the weekly tab, the only thing that we've set that function up to do so far is to remove the current class from the tab that has the current class. And does it do it? No, it doesn't do it. Okay, so let's inspect our JavaScript and find out what's going on here. So we have, let's inspect this tab. You know what? I put my JavaScript on the wrong part. I put it way down here. We want to have it on the actual tab. Hilarious. All right, on the weekly tab, when you click it, it should remove the class, but we have an error. What is our error? Can't find variable toggle goals list. So that means that I probably didn't create it correctly in my JavaScript. Did I not save my JavaScript file? Try that. Click toggle goals list. What did I call it? It should be there. Let's look at our application. JavaScript, not CSS. JavaScripts. Got it. All right. Whew. That was annoying. But now what we've done is we've created a bind where it basically tells on the document load, search for every element that has a class of goal tab and bind a click function to it. So on click, it should call this function toggle goals list, and it should reference the element that was clicked. That's what this is here. Then we created this function called toggle goals list that gets called, and the data that gets passed to it is stored in this variable element, or EL. But the only thing we've done so far is to basically tell it to find the goal tab that has the class of current and remove that class. That's the first thing we do. We also want to find the goal section that has the class of current and remove that as well. So we're going to say goals list, I believe, is how we're identifying the different goal sections. Current remove class. Is current the way we're displaying it? Yeah, current. So that will essentially also hide the section that's being displayed. Now we want to add the class current to the tab that was clicked on. And the way that we do that is that tab got passed in as an element. So we want to take the element, and we want to add class current. And let's see if that works. Look at that. We now have switched to that tab, then to that tab, and back to that tab. But we also want to display the appropriate set of data for that tab. And the way we do that is we then find goals list dot. So it's actually going to be weekly goals or daily goals or whatever. So we need to get the word weekly or daily from the element that was clicked. The element that was clicked is going to be a tab with an ID of either goal daily tab or goal weekly tab. So we need to now say, we need to get a substring of that goal underscore daily underscore tab to just say daily. So period is equal to element dot ID Java or jQuery substring. How do you get a substring in jQuery or just JavaScript? I guess it's not a jQuery method. Using regular expressions, ideally, I believe it's dot match. Let's test it. Dot match. So the ID dot match, and we start a regular expression with a slash, I believe. Yep. Then we want to have the text goal underscore. Then we want to have a set of characters, which use a set of characters that could be any number long, or a set of letters that could be any number long, followed by underscore tab. I'm not sure if that's how you use strings in regular expressions, to be honest. Let's test that actually. There's a JavaScript or regex tester. Should be one online regular expression tester right here. So our regular expression that we want to have is goal underscore, a set of words, followed by underscore tab. Pattern error. Unescaped delimiter must be escaped. So we don't need that backslash on the end. And then let's say goal daily tab test string no match. That doesn't help us. Regular expression match string. How to use string regular expression. You just use the string. You don't need to have quotation marks around them. So we don't want W literally. We want /W? No, \W. So that matches the whole thing, but we only want to return the daily portion of it. Got it. So you need to put them in. Let's go back to that regular expression tester. We want to have goal underscore. Then we want to have in brackets \w. So any number of letter characters followed by underscore tab. And then the way we test this is goal daily tab, which returns an array with a full match and the sub match. So then we take the array, we take the second part of that array. So that's how we do that here. We're going to get rid of those quotation marks. We're going to put the W with a backslash in brackets. And that is our regular expression. And then we take the first result, not the 0th result, because the 0th result will be the full string. But just the subsection of that string is what we want. And that shows up as the second result, really, which is this first index. So 0 index, first index is the second index. So that gives us a string that we assign to the period variable. So period equals daily now in this case, or weekly, depending on what you click on. Now we need to show the div that has an ID of weekly goals or daily goals or quarterly goals. So it's going to be ID of period underscore goals dot add class current. JavaScript is a confusing language, and it's not quite working. What's not working here? Type error undefined toggle goals list. There's an object, line 87, evaluating el.id.match. Okay, so there was an issue, element.id. So let's run an alert here with element.id and see what pops up. When we click on this, it should run an alert with undefined. That's not good. What if we just said l.id like that? Yeah, that's correct. So goal weekly tab, we don't need to run it like that. We can just get rid of the jQuery situation. Now, goal weekly tab, and it should show yearly. Boom, we got it. Let's get rid of that alert. Woo, finally. Okay, I think we got this thing fully fucking functional at this point. Daily. All right, we need to refresh the page so we don't have that alert in there. Show our weekly goals, which don't have any right now. We haven't created any weekly goals. We don't have any quarterly goals, but boom, we got some yearly goals. Boom, we're back to daily goals. Boom, we're back to yearly goals. Boom, we're back to daily goals. All right, I think we got it. We have our goals section you can create right here. Let's create a weekly goal. Make a weekly goal and select the period as weekly, create goal, and go back to our projects index page. We select our week. We've got our weekly goals. Amazing. The only thing we don't have right now is the ability to go back and forth between previous days or previous weeks or previous years. And I think what we will do is probably just put an arrow, boom, right there to go backwards in time, and boom, right here to go forwards in time. So those will be added as kind of maybe list item tabs. I don't know. We'll see. And that can be something we make later. But right now, I can at least see my daily goals, my weekly goals, my yearly goals. Oh, I'm so excited. Let's call that wraps for today. And we'll add it as a to-do item to create navigation for previous days and previous weeks. So let's get this submitted to the website. Get status. Boom. We need to make sure we add our migration. Get add db/migrate/star. We need to run rake assets precompile. Rails assets precompile. What exactly is the code for that? Rails assets precompile. So Rails assets precompile. And we can even say Rails environment equals production. Boom. This is going to compile the JavaScript and style sheet updates that we did to create public files for the production server. We got to make sure we add these to our Git repository. So git add public assets star git status. Awesome. So now we have our modified files. We have our new files. We need to commit all of these. Git commit -am. -a is all. -m is to allow us to write a message. And we can say making goals periodic and implementing front end on projects index page. Boom. That's our commit. Let's run git push Heroku master. This will push it to our production server. One thing I realized, we only did this on our projects index page. If we go to the Serenity project, for example, it still has the goals section down here, which doesn't have these updates that we just did. So that's another thing we're going to have to do, is add the updates to the goals, the projects, individual project pages, not just the index page. But we got the bulk of the work done to make goals periodic, and I'm very excited about that. So while this is pushing to our production server, now that's done, we have to make sure that we update our database on our production server, run the migrations that we created to add the new periodic table columns to the goals table. So we'll run Heroku run rake db migrate. Boom. Running migrations on the production server. And now when we go to our production website and we refresh it, look at that. Our goals section is on our index page and it has different periods. Notice it has all of the daily goals that we created today. I think these are the ones we created today. But if we go to weekly, there's nothing there. Quarterly, nothing there. Or so what we should have here is, if there's nothing in that section, it should say add a yearly goal or add a quarterly goal. And it should just be a link that takes you to a new goal page that automatically has on the new goal page the period selected. And that's something that we'll add down the road. But I think we're maxed out for today. So let's go back to daily. Make a daily video. Boom, we did that. Get to the studio every day. That should be a weekly goal. We need to have a way to edit goals in order to be able to do that. Make goals have time frames. We fucking did it. It took us way too long. We're probably hours into this development video. So I'm going to call that wraps for today so that I have time to get this edit done, get this video out tonight. But yeah, thanks for coming along for the ride. That was a lot of fun. Got stuck for a few minutes in a few different places there, but I think we got through it at the end. We now have goals implemented on the project's index page. We next need to implement the goals in this way on the project show page, but that should just be pretty simple copy and paste. We also need to reorganize the project show page, the individual project pages, to look like the project index page. So there's ways that we're going to maybe categorize a lot of these things, the code that we've created for these, and we're going to put them on partial pages, which then can get used in multiple different sections without having to rewrite that code multiple times. So we'll do all of that tomorrow. I'm just excited to have goals at least functioning on the project's index page. So this is goals that aren't attached to projects. That's a problem, actually. If I go here, no, they are attached to projects, but we're just not showing which project that they're attached to. And that's something that we need to add there too. So we have a lot of still to do with goals, but we're making progress on it. We got the bulk of the periodicity for goals added. And yeah, thanks for watching. And let's get back at it tomorrow. Peace. Hope you have a good night. Bye.